I just saw this and I thought it was kind of funny. You've probably seen this if you've been on Twitter as well. Our man, John Fetterman, is no longer our man. It's the most aggressive milkshake ducking that I've seen in a long time. For those who don't know, John Fetterman, even when running, was a pretty proud and open Zionist. But, like, there's always time for people to have a turnaround, and he's been really aggressive about it, even following the overtly genocidal behavior of Israel in the past few weeks. So all of his bits are now being met with, like, overwhelming negativity. Like, it's like all the lefties who before were celebrating him wearing a hoodie and shorts in the the Capitol building are now like, get a job, hippie. Put a suit on, you fat slob. Which is funny. And I think it's okay to be mean to bad people. So, yeah. Yeah, the downfall went really quick. I was quite surprised by it. I knew that he was a Zionist when he was running. This was something I knew a long time ago. Please tell me what a milkshake duck is. It's just a reference to like an earlier thing, but basically it means that people like them, but then you found out something about them that made you not like them, So, I guess I didn't expect he'd carry it forward this aggressively. Did you see the vid of a security guy throwing a guy out after asking about the ceasefire? I did see that. Wait. Yeah, that was crazy. Apparently the guy wasn't even with Fetterman, or the guy wasn't even with the bar. They were with Fetterman as well. Hold on.
Humanitarian ceasefire. I'm with the Gunners team.
Hey, no copyright.
I voted for him. I'm sorry, this is a democracy.
It absolutely is.
Yeah, but kind of, sort of. Why? 10,000 people in Gaza have been killed, half are children. The Pope's calling for a ceasefire. The UN is called for it. I'm just asking you. You're a good guy. I voted for you. I know you're a nice guy. This is important.
You need to leave.
Here, can I give you a phone? I asked you a question. I asked you a question.
Okay, so my understanding is that this guy's with Fetterman, not with the bar. I don't think he's legally allowed to shove him out. Like, this guy isn't part of a security detail that's made some specific arrangement with the bar that gives him permission to, like, shove people. Like, that's not a right that he has. This is literally just, like, a thug muscling people out. It's assault. Unless there's something that I don't know about, it's assault, yeah. Launching him out.
He just assaulted him. He just assaulted him.
You need to leave.
He just assaulted him. He just assaulted him. He was just talking to him. He's assaulted him.
I think they rented the bar for the event. It cost money to be there. I don't feel like you can just shove somebody out like that for asking Fetterman questions. Like, if Fetterman leaves and he kept pursuing Fetterman or whatever, like, maybe there'd be some ambiguity to it. But in this case, it feels pretty straightforward. Whatever the case may be, pretty bad. Apparently the guy was a Russia stooge, but this was still unjustified. Yeah, we're going to talk about that shortly. He's not the only staffer that's pissed with Fetterman, then. Former staffers call out Fetterman over his support for Israel's war in Gaza. The group said Senator John Fetterman's opposition to a ceasefire has felt like a gutting betrayal. Yeah, I feel like I think it's because in his district he's worried about, like, anti-Semitism being weaponized against him or something. I don't know. Didn't he get, like, money from Jewish advocacy groups, or was it his opposition that did, and he's worried about them galvanizing against him? I don't really remember the details, but, like, there's no excuse for this, I don't, like, I'm a pretty big advocate for, I guess, practicality and political expediency, but there are limits to that, and I think a good limit is you can't be pro-genocide just because you think it might marginally help you in an election against another Democrat. That's I feel like the marginal benefits that we gain from having a progressive Dem rather than a centrist Dem in the Senate are kind of, like, removed when you have to support a genocide to be that. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. Vosh, you should really talk about AIPAC because they have an insane level of power. They don't actually have an insane level of power. Again, it's like unborn children, right? So many political statements are made on behalf of unborn children, and you might think, like, wow, unborn children are, like, super powerful, but it's like, no, other people are just weaponizing it. AIPAC itself, like, as an institution, is nothing more than a vehicle for the cynical weaponization of anti-Semitism by both sides of the aisle against like anyone who is politically inconvenient. I don't like the rhetoric that AIPAC is super powerful because it fits really easily in with anti-Jewish conspiracy theories. In reality, the Jews themselves have almost nothing to do with what's happening right now in America concerning Zionism and our support for Israel. Like, Jews have very, very little to do with that, okay? Jews are hate crimed all the time in the United States. They're majority Democrat. You know, there's a ton of shit that happens that is like overtly anti-Semitic. Like Donald Trump's and Ron DeSantis both have like open Nazis working with them, associating with them. It really has nothing to do with that, you know? Like, for fuck's sake, Donald Trump had dinner with Nick Fuentes, a known neo-Nazi and Holocaust denier. And to my knowledge, AIPAC really didn't seem to give a shit about that. But AIPAC will go after, like, you know, coincidentally, anyone who's anti-Israel in like a more institutional sense. And it's just like, it has nothing to do with Jewish people, right? It's like, it's just cynics. It's just a cynic's easy tool, because it's easier to call your opposition anti-Semitic than it is to deal with their anti-Zionist criticism. So I guess that's what Fetterman's doing here as well. And he's been doing it pretty aggressively too. The outright JQ/Nazi posting on Twitter has become just incredible. Yeah. And you know what? You know who you can blame for that? In addition to the Nazis? You can blame the Zionists, because the Zionists are, again, doing literally everything in their power to bring this about. Much in the same way that it was to Netanyahu's benefit to galvanize Hamas and make them more dangerous, so that he could justify the the decisions that he made and his sort of authoritarian strongman posturing. The exact same thing is happening right now, where a bunch of like far-right conservatives and neoliberals, by the way, are playing into every sort of social prejudice and system that lead to these anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, like being given power, you know? Like, if you are saying, hey, it's like, dude, Jesus Christ, look at this. Israel's UN Security Council designation wearing Holocaust gold stars because, like, they're mad that people aren't supporting their genocide enough. Like, this is incredibly anti-Semitic, insanely anti-Semitic. Like, you don't want to support us killing Palestinians? Why don't you just throw us in the gas chamber then? This isn't just like crazy conservative pundits. This is the UN designation from Israel. The Security Council designation. Delegation, sorry, not designation, delegation. Like, all of this shit is, and they know it, by the way. But do you think your average Zionist, like people like this, do you think people like this give a shit that anything they're doing or saying empowers Nazis? Of course they don't. Netanyahu is a Holocaust revisionist, and they voted him in. Like, the people, like, this is not about Jews and their decision making, because their decision making has been proven time and time again to be relevant in the face of people who will cynically weaponize their existence in favor of their own political ends. You know, if anything, all of this is shown is the most powerless group here is the Jews, because many of them have no choice but to sit on their hands and watch as, like, the American neolib, neocon, far right coalition weaponize their name to support a fascist regime in the Middle East that's associating them with the monstrous behavior of the fascist regime, polluting the and disrespecting, like, the honor of Holocaust victims. Like, it's completely, and Fetterman's doing this as well. Fetterman is 100% completely feeding into all of this. Unfortunately, regular Jews, i.e. not Zionists, will suffer. Again, is history repeating? Well, yeah, they tend to be like the canary in the coal mine, right? You're factually wrong about AIPAC having no power. They have insane fundraising access and have outspent progressives completely. Okay, when I say AIPAC in and of itself has no power, there's a reason why I'm saying this, okay? What I'm saying is it is a proxy vehicle for groups to attack each other over issues that aren't anti-Semitism, using anti-Semitism as the hammer, the accusation of anti-Semitism, okay? When you say shit like AIPAC is insanely powerful, what do you think people who aren't educated enough on the issue hear, okay? Exercise a bit of responsibility. All right, we're already dealing with, like, a massive spike in the prominence of the far right, who are weaponizing Israel's monstrous behavior to, like, promote their own politics. You know, like, it's like when you say, like, AIPAC is responsible, AIPAC does this, AIPAC is so powerful. It's oh my God, I feel like Israel wants people to hate Jews. They do, 100% they do. Yes, Israel, that's why Israel pushes itself as the only real homeland for Jews. Israel wants to do the same thing for Jews globally that, like, Osama bin Laden wanted to do with Muslims in America. Make their host countries so hateful towards that group that they have no reprise but to be galvanized towards extremism and to go over to the one quote-unquote place where they're safe. Much in the same way that Osama bin Laden wanted, like, expatriated Muslims in the United States to be hated by America, which would cause them to, like, go back to the Arab world or, like, become terrorists or whatever. Israel wants the exact same thing, which is why Israel keeps saying, like, hey, we need a safe space for Jews. We need a safe homeland for Jews. When they keep also saying Israel isn't safe for Jews, like, they literally want you to believe two things simultaneously, and they're completely incompatible. And one is that Israel is constantly under threat by its neighbors. Israel needs to fight in order to survive, but also that it's the only safe place for Jews to exist. Dog, New York City, Philadelphia, Los Angeles. Your average Jew is probably safer there than they are in Israel. Fun fact, they have a massive hatred for Holocaust survivors in Israel. Yeah, there's a big narrative with, like, Israeli Zionists that Holocaust survivors were weak. Basically, like, their logic is like, those weak Jews let themselves be killed, but we're strong Jews who will never let it happen again. So there's, like, a lot of really weird shit going on there. Israel really is one of those countries where the more you learn about it, the more, like, evil it becomes. There's more nuance in American treating of, like, Native Americans, I swear to God. Genuinely, learning about American history and the monstrous shit that we did, there's more like, okay, well, it was really complicated here. And then you look at some shit in Israel's past and it's like, oh no, it's just evil shit. Like it's actually not that complicated. Like, it's actually, like, just very from the get-go. Maybe it's because you can't really found a nation based on, like, the ethnic homeland principle. America was founded for a lot of reasons, and obviously racism was a big part of it, but there were a lot of principles that went into America's founding that weren't just, hey, we just had a Holocaust happen and we need to, like, create a fortress for ourselves and anything that we do is justifiable as long as it's in service of that goal. I don't know, maybe, like, if you found a nation based on those, like, I don't know, like, if that's the bedrock that you lay, maybe it's just, like, pretty guaranteed everything that happens afterwards is bad. What about people who say that Israel has a right to exist? It's an idiotic, like, thought terminating statement. It's designed to, like, shut down conversation. Like what you could say that about anything anywhere. Like, what, did Germany have a right to exist when, like, it was getting invaded from the west and from the, like, what does that mean? Do you mean, like, should every single ethnically German person be killed? Well, no, it seems a bit extreme. Does that mean, like, Germany in its current form should continue to exist? Well, if they're getting invaded from the west and from the east, that probably means that it's the end of World War II. So no, they should not continue to exist in their current state. Like, what does that mean, you know? Does Israel have a right to exist? Hey, here's the real answer. No nation has a right to exist. What do you mean right? People have rights. What do you mean a nation has a right? Like, a nation's a person? Like it has feelings? No. What? The people who live in Israel, Palestinians and Jews alike, have a right to live peaceful, happy lives. And right now, Israel is keeping that from happening. Israeli officials have the power, the military force, whatever, the diplomatic connections to keep that from happening for both groups. By engaging in inflammatory, like, local policy and geopolitical policy, which keeps them being on, like, the wrong side of history and, like, locally, it means they'll never form alliances. Like, Netanyahu was literally working to build rapport with neighboring Arab countries. And what's happened? What's happened? Now all of those relationships have been tanked. Things with Iran have gotten worse. Things with Lebanon have gotten worse. Things with Qatar have gotten worse. Things with Egypt have gotten worse. And why? Because they can't help themselves. They want Palestinian blood. Fascists aren't rational. Like, they will guide themselves to destruction, you know? Remember that Israel's national security minister has been giving out guns to settlers in the West Bank, has a mural eulogizing the mass murder of Palestinians at his home. Yeah, Ben Gvir, right? We talked about this. While Israel's national security minister having a mural of a mass shooter in his house isn't already insane enough, it doesn't even tell the whole story. The mural doesn't commemorate the mass shooter, but the mass shooting itself. Photo of the mural of the Israeli-American mass murderer Baruch Goldstein that Ben Gvir hung in his home. Superimposed behind Goldstein is an image of the Cave of the Patriarchs, the Hebron massacre where Goldstein carried out his 1994 massacre. This is the current Israeli national security minister. The equivalent of this would be having, I don't know, like, a Trump DOD official or, like, cabinet pick having, like, a big framed like, photoshopped mock-up of the Christchurch shooting or something, where it's like, we celebrate the shooting at Christchurch. Like, that is the equivalent. Like, again, this is their national security minister. He's been running around the West Bank giving guns to settlers so they can extrajudicially kill Palestinians in the West Bank. Wasn't he asked to take it down, and he called the people who asked him to take it down unpatriotic? Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. So a Nazi? I mean, again, like it's like the Jitler shit, right? Like ideologically, yes, a lot of the officials in Israel are pretty much ideologically indistinguishable from Nazis. They just switch the names around, the exact same thing that every other group does. You have the exact same narrative about like our people once had a great and glorious past. We must reclaim our homeland. Our race is superior to others. These Untermenschen are like destroying our society from within and from without. We must use our influence. It's the same thing every time, dude. With Jews, black people, Indians. Some even speak of rumors of there being a white Hitler. It's really bad. Yeah. Hamas says the same thing. Yeah, they do. The difference being that Hamas is a ragtag militia that was given power by Israel, whereas Israel is a fully formed nation state with nuclear weapons that is backed up by the United States. Is it fair to call Israel a terrorist state? It's like a oxymoronic. Terrorism is definitionally like it. I mean, if a terrorist state is a state where they encourage terror in civilians, that's a lot of countries. Like, I mean, Israel deserves it more than most, I guess. But like what we call terrorism versus what we call, you know, freedom fighting or whatever is a super arbitrary line. The most unoriginal observation in history. I really subscribe to your theory that fascism is social illness. Yeah, I fully believe that. Yeah. Have you seen Netanyahu switching his justifications in his speeches to now quoting biblical passages where God encourages his followers to engage in genocide? Yeah, I've seen that. There's no ambiguity about it. Like, ask an Israeli official, like, hey, what's going on over there? And they're literally like, you know, God has called us to purge the like like there's no ambiguity to it. And Biden endorses all of this, all of it. Biden has said, the White House administration has said multiple times, you know, there are no holds in their support for Israel. Their support for Israel is unequivocal. It's unconditional. So yeah, like fully endorsed. Yeah, I've seen this thing. More detained Palestinians from the West Bank forced to wave Israel's flag along with satirical music from a TikTok challenge. Another Palestinian detained in the West Bank with a soldier yelling at him, "You're a bitch, son of a bitch." Again, no Hamas is in charge of the West Bank. Israeli soldiers made it into a TikTok challenge to kidnap and blindfold Palestinians along with the tunes of the something song. I don't know. Yeah, it's difficult to know the details of everything that's happening, but my basic impression of what's going on in the West Bank is that you can literally just go there and like a Palestinian, then shoot them and walk out and you're fine. Like, I genuinely, like, the impression that I'm getting from everything that I've heard about the West Bank is that if you're an Israeli settler, the police just will not. Like, I mean, maybe that's like a slight hyperbole, but only slight. I feel like I've heard so much shit of that, like that video of the settler with the rifle who just went up and shot who just went up and shot a Palestinian guy, and then an IDF soldier just like let him walk away, you know? Yeah, the West Bank is the Wild West for settlers, exactly. Leaked Israeli plan to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yeah, I saw this. The plan advocates the forced transfer of the population of the Gaza Strip to Sinai permanently and calls for the international community to be leveraged to assist the move. I don't know if this is the plan or if it's just a plan. Leaked document issued by the Ministry of Intelligence recommending the occupation of Gaza and the total transfer of its 2.3 million inhabitants to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The document identifies a plan to transfer all residents of the Gaza Strip to North Sinai as the preferred option among three alternatives regarding the future of the Palestinians in Gaza at the end of the current war between Israel and Hamas-led Palestinian resistance. Cool. The UN defines ethnic cleansing as, quote, rendering an area ethnically homogenous by using force or intimidation to remove from a given area persons of another ethnic or religious group. What's happening right now meets the UN definition for both ethnic cleansing and genocide. There's no ambiguity. Again, anyone who wants to do this, like, you crazy lefties will call anything genocide. Like, they're full of it. It's just the UN definition, like, fully encapsulates. Bringing about conditions designed so unlivable, designed to destroy a group in whole or in part. Like, it's very clear. Like, there's not Sinai. Is there a distinction between ethnic cleansing and genocide according to the UN? Yeah, I think it's about, like, ethnic cleansing can also include removing a group from an area entirely, whereas genocide, like, requires the eradication of that group partially or entirely. You know, I don't really care, gut or profit. Somebody in chat was like, how much would it take for the Biden administration to change their mind on this fun clip?
Doesn't Biden think the anti-Israel protesters in this country are extremists?
Oh, you can tell, by the way, that this clip is incredibly revealing because there are ton of liberals replying to it being like, this is so dishonest of you, Ryan Grimm. This is so, you're lying here and you know it. But like, listen to the clip, man.
Doesn't Biden think the anti-Israel protesters in this country are extremists?
What I can say is what we've been very clear about this. When it comes to anti-Semitism, there's no place. We have to make sure that we speak against it very loud and be very clear about that. Remember, what the president decided when the president decided to run for president is what he saw in Charlottesville in 2017, when he saw neo-Nazis marching down the streets of Charlottesville with vile anti-Semitic.
So do you think the anti-Israel protesters are extremists? Incoherent babbling followed with, as you know, Joe Brandon opposed the Charlottesville neo-Nazis. It's babble from its most. It's babble that indicates a comparison, right? It's indicative babble. But this is like unfathomable for the press secretary to just jump from, do you think anti-Israel protesters are extremists, to, as you know, we will never tolerate any anti-Semitism. Look at how we oppose the Charlottesville neo-Nazis. Also, like, pardon me for being petty, and you'll hear more of it as this clip goes on, but don't you think that a press secretary should be a little bit more, I don't know, charismatic? I saw it on Twitter, the idea that this neoliberal affectation of saying, let me be clear, and then babbling incoherent gibberish for 2 minutes is getting more and more common. She's always been boring. Yeah, I know, just like Jen Psaki wasn't either. Like, you'd really think they would try to get a Rizzler up here. Like, Obama was charismatic. That's why he could say, let me be clear. Though he would also babble, but he would babble charismatically.
Just hatred, and he was very clear then, and he's very clear now. He's taken actions against this over the past 2 years, and he's continued to be clear. There is no place for this type of vile and despite this kind of rhetoric.
And we hear you guys, though, talk about extremists all the time. It is usually about MAGA extremists. So what about...
She didn't even answer the question. Do you think anti-Israel protesters are extremists? Babble, we're against anti-Semitism. Like those Charlottesville protesters, we won't tolerate anti-Semitism. So it's a pretty direct comparison between anti-Israel protesters and Charlottesville neo-Nazis. Also, notice how she, too, is directly conflating Israel and Jewish people, an anti-Semitic trope that for some reason people claiming to defend Jewish people are doing.
About these protesters who are making Jewish
I've
students
been
feel
very,
unsafe
very
on college campuses. Are they extremists?
I've been very, very clear. We are calling out any form of hate. Any form of hate. It is not acceptable. It should not be acceptable here, and we are going to continue to call that out. And let me be very clear. This is a president that has continued to have that fight in his office, in this administration. You know, when he repealed Trump's Muslim ban on his first day in office, that is something that this president did. He also established an inter-policy committee to counter Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and related forms of bias and discrimination. We have taken this very, very, very seriously, from the president all the way on down.
Yeah, so I guess, like, it really does seem like, at the moment, the White House administration is still completely unwilling to engage with any criticism of Israel's behavior outside of, like, meekly calling for a humanitarian corridor so that we can get a brief pause in the slaughter of civilians to give them some, like, I don't know, bags of Doritos, and then get right back to it. Do you think the tide is turning with Israel among known progressives? I don't really have the polling data for that. It certainly seems so. Like, I saw, even though Arab Americans don't represent a super significant portion of the population, I think it's like 0.5% or something. I don't fucking know. Absolutely plummeted. Yeah, it went from like 55% support to like 20% support. 17%, sorry. It went from 59% in 2020 to 17% for now, which is an astonishing drop. And of course, there was that 1 month 11-point drop in support from Democrats. It's like I've said this before, but like if not now, when? It like Israel is very clearly a loose cannon. Like the arrangement was Israel gets to be our Middle Eastern military base, and in return, the United States would give them military aid and a bunch of geopolitical cover. You know, and now that Israel is almost entirely a detriment to our geopolitical interests, now that they're like causing a huge stir in a way that hurts us, like massively so. It's just another fascist regime in the Middle East, you know, like, right, it's Jewish instead of instead of like Islamofascist. Congratulations, we've come so far for diversity. And now, like, at what point do you cut the line, right? At what point do you say, like, enough is enough? And it seems like eventually the decision's going to have to be made, because Israel isn't getting better at this rate, they're getting worse. So at what point does a president say, like, okay, that's enough. Like, this behavior is beyond the pale. We can't accept this anymore. Biden is holding off on cutting the line, and as a consequence of that, has lost 11 points of Democrat support in 1 month. About the same amount that he lost after withdrawing from Afghanistan, but this is going to keep happening. Like, the Israel situation isn't going to be resolved after a month like it was in Afghanistan. The Afghanistan withdrawal was a pretty quick thing. We left, took a little bit of time, the Taliban swept the ANA, you know, like, it was done. This is going to keep going for a long, long time. Yeah, look at that plummet in support. Jesus Christ. 59 to 17. Whew. Do you think Netanyahu likes that he's doing this during Biden's term in the hope Trump's get in 2024? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Netanyahu's a fascist. Of course, he 100% wants Trump to be in charge. Yeah. This genocide will be the first time there was a genocide encouraged by the U.S., right? No. No, not at all. There have been plenty throughout history that we have endorsed or committed. I will say that in recent history, this is definitely the worst, though. So post-Cold War, this is definitely the worst. More people died through the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, but those weren't really framed as genocides. They were invasions. And I know that's kind of like a fuzzy line, but I do maintain that there is a meaningful distinction between a neocon killing a bunch of people by invading Iraq, toppling a dictator, and then, like, for the region, than there is the systemic targeted elimination of the Palestinian people. I think that there's a meaningful difference in, like, intent and plausible deniability there. Not to say the Iraq War was good, just I don't really think it fits under the mantle of genocide, even if a lot of people died. I know you don't go on TikTok, but almost every young left-leaning person I see on there is donezo with Biden. Yeah, like what? Again, like mathematically, factually, if we put on our big boy hats and our big boy glasses and our thinking caps and blah, 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 it is objectively correct that Biden winning is better than Trump winning. And so the vote blue, no matter who logic follows through, it still remains the same. However, right now, there is essentially no rhetorical benefit in pushing that line with people who are doing the, like, I'm done with Biden bit, because I genuinely don't think there's anything to be gained by going up to people and being like, hey, listen, Trump would have done the same genocide. It's just like, I am willing to go out in a leg for a lot of shilly pro-Biden shit that most lefties won't, and that's one of the things that makes me principled over, like, these dipshit, like, cosmopolitan Twitter lefties who will only vote for someone they like. But right now, like, we have to acknowledge the fact that at the end of the day, this is about, like, pragmatism. It's about your ability to meaningfully change people's minds. And if you can't do it, then you have to try another approach. And maybe the best approach is just to like harp on about how bad Trump is, you know? Because he is really bad. But, like, goddamn, dude, like, all Trump is doing right now is very loudly losing a bunch of cases against him. What Biden is doing is openly, loudly supporting a genocide. Like, dude. Oh my God. I cannot believe he would fumble like this about not looking like an annoying smug lib. It's not just about not looking like an annoying smug lib. It's that, like, at the end of the day, people are susceptible to their emotional biases. And you're just not like, there is nobody is going to, like, okay, let me put it this way. Remember how difficult it was to try to convince people to vote for Biden when all Biden had done was be a neoliberal? How difficult do you think it's going to be to convince those same people now that he's a neoliberal plus genocide? Like, what the I thought we had some good momentum going in, considering all the wins that we had for unions lately. But, like, I can't argue against that. Like, I can't convince people. Like, I can argue against it logically, but not in a way that's going to convince people, you know, because this is clearly, like, this is so beyond the pale. So, you know, we have to focus mostly on pointing out how bad Trump is, I guess, because this is pretty tough to talk around. I wonder if some of the youth vote could be reconciled by looking at the consequences of trans rights under an all-red federal government. I really don't know if I can. No. Just no. Don't even. Just don't even. Ugh. How do Democratic presidents face consequences? How do presidents face consequences? I mean, the best argument is you want to do one genocide or two. Since no. Please don't argue with me on this. Please. Holy shit. A lot of you guys weren't here with me in 2020, back when I lost a huge amount of cred with the lefty community for meekly suggesting that a neoliberal might be preferable to an open fascist. Like, I lost so much credibility by saying that, even though I was right, and everything in the universe that has happened since then has proven me right. I am not doing this all over again for genocide Biden, okay? We're going to talk about how bad the Reds are. That's what we're going to focus on. That's the line. Biden's support is done. There's no point anymore. It's over. It's poisoned irreparably. There's no way people who are moved towards inaction by this are going to be moved back with impassioned like voter shaming. You know, I'm normally in favor of voter shaming because I think it can work in a lot of cases. I don't think it can work here, so we just have to focus on other stuff to get people to vote against Donald Trump, I suppose. Biden literally did everything he could them out. Yeah, that's true. Him saying that he unconditionally supported Israel, denying or doubting the number of Palestinian deaths, failing to restrain or hold them back in any fashion, saying they had their full support. Yeah, that's true. What else could he have possibly done? He has tried to hold them back. Netanyahu told him to f*** off. Netanyahu can't tell us to f*** off. Do you know who we are? This isn't an even game. We don't play fair. We're America. We can do anything we want. And publicly supporting Israel, saying, like, literally, we just watched the press secretary compare anti-Israel protesters to neo-Nazis. Yeah, you could do... Oh, dude, all he can do is meekly pressure him from behind the scenes to maybe possibly get a humanitarian corridor open while not mentioning anything in public. Yeah, now, fuck off, dude. It's genuine. It's like, because you're being a liberal right now, I have to assume that, you have like a high opinion of the amount of support that we can and have provided Ukraine. It's incredible how neoliberals believe in the immense, overwhelming power of the United States when it comes to doing things they think are possible, but when it comes to doing something just a little bit sort of outside their like, range of expected power, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, actually, we have no power whatsoever. We might be the most powerful nation to ever existed. We might be gods on earth. We might have the ability to end the world several times over. We might have the geopolitical clout. Listen, we had the geopolitical clout. We had the diplomatic power to shield Israel from a world of hatred, okay? We certainly have the power to abet it. All right? If we can single-handedly keep the United Nations from falling down on Israel, like Superman holding up the roof of a collapsing building, okay? We can certainly let go of that building. But do we? No. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the United States Security Council representative just 2 days ago blocked a vote. Oh, sorry, this was the one from 2 weeks ago. U.S. vetoes UN resolution condemning all violence against civilians in Israel-Hamas war. We're doing all we can, okay? We're doing all we can. Even condemnations are too much for us. Oh yeah, this was the same thing I was referring to, yeah. Do you think Biden's actions are going to affect how people vote in 2024? Oh, yes. Could this give Trump the opening he needs? Yes, actually. I don't know if it'll be enough. Trump's still in a lot of trouble, but why is he blindly supporting Israel? Even though it would hurt him? Because he's afraid to cut the rope. Vosh, you're Dunning-Kruger and American exceptionalism personified, Lamau. That's true. Only an American exceptionalist could believe that the UN representative, or the U.S. representative at the UN would have the power to not vote no. That's true. I naively believe that the United States has the ability to send a representative with the finger strength to hit the big yes button rather than the big no button. But that's foolish of me. I'm engaging in a kind of American diabolism here. That's true. Everyone who disagrees with me on this is personally wishes they were in the West Bank and Gaza Strip mutilating Palestinian babies. They're insane. They're psychotic. This actually reminds me a lot of how, like, if you go on Twitter right now, a lot of the, like, NAFO and OSINT accounts and non-credible defense on Reddit are, like, full-throatedly pro-Israel, It's a reminder that liberal allies for Ukraine were only allies for Ukraine because it was geopolitically convenient. Remember, liberals are only ever allies of convenience. They're treacherous by nature. They only ever support the good side if the good side was already on their side. they're now defending the exact same behavior that Russia has engaged in from Israel. Gloating about civilian casualties, massive military skew in firepower, gloating over look how many bombs they can drop, because they didn't actually care that Ukraine was fighting off an oppressor. That was just like a convenient additional. That was like an extra justification. In reality, it's just about supporting Western hegemony. Truly just Western chauvinists. Need to see some evidence of this? The main OSN Twitter accounts are literally pro-Israel. How can you possibly be pro-Ukraine and pro-Israel unless you're just a Western chauvinist? It makes absolutely no sense. Absolutely none. All of the rhetoric that Russia used to justify its invasion is being used by Israel. First of all, Israel is openly ethnic replacement pilled, okay? Like, Israel's literally just like, they are evil, they're an evil people, like, biblical verses, this, that, the other. So that's one. For two, the idea of, like, Ukraine, like, provoked or prompted them. Russia also used the same disingenuous accusation of ethnic cleansing in like eastern Ukraine. Russia being like, we'll never have peace as long as Ukraine is fomenting violence here in the east, when Russia was the one who caused the situation that led to that violence. When the exact same thing is the case with Israel. Not wanting to drag something into this, but the DGG subreddit's full of pro-genocide people. What did I just say about liberals? Yeah, obviously. Fomenting or fermenting? Well, fermenting is what you do with, like, yeast, right? So fomenting, probably. Do you fear Trump will claim to be anti-Israel in 2024 to appeal to the far right and disaffected Democrats? No. What I do fear is that there will be enough people on the left, but not enough people on the right who get sort of disillusioned by all of this. I worry that we're going to have very low voter turnout in 2024. I was expecting very high voter turnout, but maybe not. Trump is barely campaigning, and, Biden's doing what Biden's doing. So far, any. I think that's a little bit naive of you to say that polling right now, first of all, 29% ranking this new conflict in their top 5 issues is a pretty big deal. And for two, that could change. We only need a couple percentage points to skew. Historically, it never matters. I genuinely think that's really misguided of you. Like, a huge portion of the Democrats' sort of ticket into the White House is the young voting group, and the young voters already don't need any excuse to not vote, okay? Young voters are already looking for any reason to sit at home and jerk off and smoke weed. So, like, this definitely does not help there. How, like, a huge part of the, like, voter mobilization that we got during 2020 and 2022 were young voters going out there at their colleges and, like, riling people up. How are any of them going to do that now? Like, do you really think there are going to be people who are out there, like, super gunned up, like, voting for Biden, like, rooting for Biden, getting people to get, like, registered to vote for Biden, when the most recent thing that Biden loudly did was abet and enable a genocide in the Middle East? Like, I don't want to, like, it's possible it doesn't have as much of an effect as I think, but I really don't think that it's, like, permanently online to think this might have a significant effect. Based on what you're just saying, stuff that isn't actually based on voter behavior, voters vote in the economy. But why are you being thick-headed about this? I strongly disagree with your assessment of this. Vosh, the solution is legalizing weed. Biden does that in 2024 as a lock. That's true. That can undo everything. That's true. Already too many words, low-hanging fruit. The problem here is that, like, if logical arguments would win the day for us, then that's that, right? Like, if logical arguments were sufficient. Wait, hold on. I don't think you should base your assessment of how voters feel to any, like, wait, why are you dying in this hill? Holy shit. The idea that something that led in 1 month to an 11-point drop in support for Joe Biden, like, it might have a significant effect, especially when it disproportionately affects young people. I have no idea why you're pretending this is just like, oh, you listen to people on Twitter. Like, what you're suggesting essentially is that politics doesn't matter and the behavior of presidents doesn't matter. And I don't believe that. I think that politics, like the politicking, matters less than a lot of people think that it does, but I do think there are meaningful outcomes that it matters to pay attention to this. I also don't want to, like, give Dems the pass implicitly by downplaying the electoral gravity of genocide. I feel like genocide should be sort of treated as a political liability, especially when I think that it is. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. It's not like I don't want Biden to win.